So just to start, just tell us about yourself. Who are you? Why are you running?
Yeah, so it's a fairly broad question. I'm a private sector person. I, after law school, clerked for a federal judge for a year and then went to a national law practice. I was with a big law firm that had about 1,000 lawyers and became a litigation partner with them. So I was traveling across the country litigating cases, doing defense work, doing a lot of environmental defense work, personal injury defense work, some business-to-business disputes, that sort of thing. Some civil rights disputes when I stepped in and helped defend the municipal police departments against actions against them. I did that kind of work, and that lifestyle was really busy. I was on the road quite a lot. It wasn't really the values we wanted to have as a young family, so I went and transitioned to the head of litigation at Devon Energy, and we moved back to Oklahoma City, and I was the head of litigation until about 2019, and then a couple of my friends and I joined together and became the senior management team of a oil field services startup company that we built out here in Oklahoma, and then the Midland Basin, and sold it just over a year ago. And shortly after that, Governor Stitt called me and offered me the Secretary of Energy and Environment job, and I joined him just about exactly a year ago in November. And as I look at what comes next for me, I'm a firm believer in that private sector vision or that founding father's vision, excuse me, that you make a living and you make a life in the private sector. You go serve the public. It's an act of public service. And it came to me, well, if you're ever going to do this, now's the time. I've never run for office before, never even thought about it, but I've always had business interest or clients or something like that kept me from doing it. And if there's a time to do it, now's the time. And we need more private sector voices in statewide elected office. And frankly, I thought of not me, who, because we just don't have enough candidates with that kind of background.
What do you think sets you apart from the other candidates?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just my legal experience and business experience, the combination of those two. So I've had extensive experience with a national law practice, litigating cases across the country. I've also had experience putting litigation teams together as the head of litigation, where we put teams together to defend 250 cases at any given time in multiple states across the country. So I have that legal experience at a very, very high level. I also have business experience, having led business at a high level with a company that we brought from a startup type field to a much more mature business that we sold off just about a year ago. So I think that's a real distinguishing feature between me and my opponents.
What would you say is the biggest thing you've learned as Energy Secretary?
Yeah, I think really is just the pressures that are going to be on electricity markets going forward. We see a boon in electricity demand both now and what's really projected over the next 5 to 10 years. Really unprecedented type demand we have in electricity, and how we're going to respond to that as a state is very important, while also maintaining protections for ratepayers. We need to make sure ratepayers are protected as these large loads, as we call it, those are demands on the system. As these large loads come on the system, we need to make sure that they're paying for the infrastructure and the costs associated with that new electricity while protecting ratepayers.
You mentioned that you're not a career politician.
Right.
One of the things that I've seen from you is that you would want to get politics out of the AG's office.
Right.
How do you envision doing that?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I have a long-term vision of the Office of Attorney General. You've seen Attorney General across the country and in Oklahoma become more and more political over time. I want to have a long-term vision, go over there, really be dedicated to be Attorney General, not use it as a stepping stone for another political office, and have a vision over 4 years. And if I'm so lucky as to be reelected and have something to give still at that point, maybe 8 years, and then call it a day on a public career. And so having that long-term vision gets the short-term political personal motivations out of the office and gets back to calling balls and strikes, as we hear from Chief Justice John Roberts, and what that office should do. I think another related part of that office is we've seen the AGs and legal offices get more and more political with lawfare across the country, and we need to get back and away from that and have really making sure the public has the trust in the Attorney General, which of all the elected positions, that is the most important one for the public to have the trust in.
As Attorney General, what do you think is the most important part of that job?
Yeah, I think it's a few different things. It's hard for me to say one most important part. I describe it as sort of a three-legged stool, right? One is the criminal justice side, and we need to make sure we harden our target from Chinese criminal influences that are taking over our rural farmland for Chinese grow or criminal or legal marijuana grow operations, and fentanyl. We need to harden the target there. Another part is civil lawsuits, right? If Oklahoma is ever sued or is suing, the Attorney General acts as the attorney for the state. And then the third part is act as a general counsel for the various state agencies around the office, around the state. I'm the only candidate that's had experience in all three of those sectors before. And so I feel like I have the distinguishing feature and the distinguishing resume that makes me, at least among the candidates, that uniquely qualified for this job.
When you're out talking with Oklahomans, I'm sure you've been door knocking, what are the issues on their mind? What are the big things that you're hearing from them that you would want to tackle as Attorney General?
I think a lot of people share the optimism in Oklahoma that I have. I think Oklahoma is well positioned over the next 10 years to really succeed and have a thriving economy and a thriving state. And we're at the precipice of really doing some great things. But we have to have the right people in the right seats. And I think Oklahomans are hungry for a fresh perspective, a fresh vision for the state, somebody with a real private sector experience, and marry that with a national law experience. I think people are hungry for that, and that message is resonating as a statewide candidate.
Kind of with that, for the first time in a few years, we will have a new governor, a new attorney general, even down to a new state superintendent. How do you envision working with the legislature, the executive branch, and other state agencies?
Sure, they all need to be respected. I mean, obviously, they're elected constitutional officers too in their own regards. I think as a private sector businessman and a lawyer, I've engaged with the legislature in the past to help make our judicial system more efficient and streamlined while also protecting Oklahomans. As the Secretary of Energy, I've worked with the Trump administration to try to streamline regulations for business and make the national regulatory regime and the state regulatory regime more streamlined for businesses to help grow the economy. And as Attorney General candidate, I want to continue to engage for those positive aspects for Oklahoma. I can't control who's going to be governor or lieutenant governor or any of these people, or any of these offices, but I've told all the governor candidates who I would be working with the most. The Attorney General and the governor are the top two elected officials in the state of Oklahoma. And I've told them all that we each have our own constitutional responsibilities, and there will be a lot of times we agree and sometimes we disagree. But you won't ever hear from me for the first time that I disagree with you in the headline of a newspaper. We want to work together to have a common vision as much as we can for the state of Oklahoma to make sure it's rolling in the right direction and really take advantage of that opportunity we have, as I see, for the next decade of real thriving economy, thriving place to live, and a place where I want my two daughters to come back and live and raise a family when they grow up.
You've also talked a lot about, we've talked about the private sector, but just business in general. How does the AG make Oklahoma a more business-friendly state?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. My vision for that is really around regulatory reform. The Office of Attorney General does not directly do regulations, but what they can do is know how to streamline regulations and have specialists within the Office of the Attorney General to use that general counsel hat, if you will. I've been a general counsel, I know how this works. So when you talk to the various agencies, use that influence as a general counsel to leverage the expertise that the Attorney General has in the process of reforming regulations and help that be adopted by agencies across the state. So take, for example, the intersection of AI and regulations, right? There's technology now that you can have AI scrub regulations and help streamline those regulations, really tie it back to what's required by federal state statute and what's not. And then you can take that expertise and then help counsel the various agencies on how to use that. And that's just one aspect. There'll be much more of that coming in the future.
What are some of the things that Gettner Drummond has done that you maybe agree with? What are some things that you would have maybe done differently that he's done over the past 3 years?
Yeah, obviously the current Attorney General is running for governor. He will have opponents who I'm sure are very eager to point out places he's failed or places where he hasn't succeeded as much as he hoped. And I'll let them run their race on that. Really, my vision for the Attorney General's office is to crack down on illegal Chinese criminal influences around illicit marijuana and fentanyl. We can do that by partnering with federal resources and pulling these organizations out by root and branch rather than playing whack-a-mole with them. I want to make Oklahoma a place for my kids to come back and live and raise a family and a place to work. And that goes kind of back to what we were talking about earlier of really capturing what is on the verge of the next 10 years for Oklahoma and making sure we have the right people in the right position. And thirdly, getting back to getting politics out of the office. I think that's a very, very important part of this. Get back to the basic blocking and tackling of the office and calling balls and strikes, if you will, and making sure that this nationalization of lawfare as we see it is not something that we experience in Oklahoma.
You set a fundraising goal pretty early on. What do you see in that aspect over the next however many months? And just in general, what do the next months between now and November look like for you?
Yeah, we have our head down and we're running hard. There's no doubt about it. We're getting out across the state. We have a very positive reception. That manifested itself in the fundraising quarter that you referenced. We did have the most successful fundraising quarter in the history of the AG race. We feel like our message of having a private sector voice with national legal experience and a fresh perspective on Oklahoma is really resonating. And now we're taking that message out across the state and get into big communities and small communities and everything in between. And we're finding a very positive reception.
What would be your biggest message to Oklahomans right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest message is be optimistic, be positive. Oklahoma's in a great spot. We have a great place to go. We just need to have the right people to get us there. Those fresh perspectives, those with experienced people who are fit for the job, I think can really take advantage of where Oklahoma is. And I'm really guided by making sure that my two daughters, who are 19 and 16, as they grow up, want to come back to Oklahoma and raise a family and have a career. And we need to make sure that we capture this moment we have in Oklahoma to make sure that that vision is fulfilled. As Attorney General, I also want to crack down on public corruption. We mentioned earlier that the legal side and the Office of Attorney General has to maintain the public trust. So do our elected officials across the country. We cannot have a functioning democracy without trust in our elected officials. And we see all too often of public officials acting in ways that are corrupt or can certainly be perceived as corrupt. And we need to have a robust public corruption office in the Attorney General to make sure to root that kind of activity out and have Oklahomans trust their public officials and trust the activities that we that are privileged enough to be elected are pursuing.
Can I ask, was there a specific instance of that recently that you would have acted on if you were Attorney General?
You know, I think, again, it's hard to know what's publicly corrupt and what is just facing short-term personal political objectives, right? I want to get personal political objectives out of it. I have a long-term vision for the Office of Attorney General, so there won't be any blurring of the lines there for me. And I think, we just hear a lot of anecdotes. There's a lot of concern among Oklahomans about public corruption. And we need to shine a bright spotlight on it. If it's not there, great. But I suspect, sunshine's the best disinfectant. And just shining a light on it will clean up a lot of the concerns of the public, and to the extent there is corruption there, will clean up a lot of the corruption itself.